if we are actually live. Okay, here we go. Right, this time, fingers crossed. We should now be actually live. Yes, we are.
It's working now, is it? Cool.
Yeah, it's working. So sorry about that, everybody. That might have been on a moment ago and we kicked you off, but we were having some technology problems and for whatever reason it wasn't working, but we're back and hopefully Claire and all those others that had joined will come back, so fingers crossed. Okay, right, without further ado, because we're 6 minutes in and we haven't actually said it, we'll talk today about how and why VAs should get paid up front. I'm just going to give it 1 minute to let people in, and while we do, we might as well talk about the weather because that's what we do in the UK. And yesterday was so nice.
Yeah,
went out for a walk. It was just incredible. I need to turn these notifications
yeah,
on.
let me turn mine off as well.
Because they're so loud. So yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice here actually, but I don't really get to venture outside very often anymore. Just sort of in my little hovel in here.
I know. That's the problem. Oh my God, why don't these notifications go away? Yeah, yesterday we went for a country walk. It was so nice just to be out in the sun and to take your coat off. And today it's going to be even warmer here. I'm in the Peak District in Derbyshire, and it's going to be apparently 17 degrees.
Wow. Well, I went to the beach on Saturday and Sunday last week, and it was lush.
Look at you.
It was so nice. Yeah, we were down for like a couple of hours, took both the dogs down there, and it was hardly anybody down there. It was lush. The sun was shining. It was cold, but it was lovely.
Oh, how nice. Right, what was I going to say? Now, if you are here, then please give us a wave. Drop a comment about who you are, where you're from, what part of the world you're in. It'd be so interesting to see where people are joining from. Just 1 moment. My son is in the room and he's making noise.
I wondered what that was.
That's what you want, isn't it? You tell them to be absolutely quiet and just make noise. So thanks for that. Right, okay. Unfortunately, we kicked people off because we were having technology issues, but I'm hoping people will actually come back on and join us. But we're going to talk today about getting paid up front, why and how VA should get paid up front. This is like a topic I'm so passionate about, because I see all the time in forums, in groups, or on posts about VAs not getting paid or worrying about when they're going to get paid. And actually, I saw a social media post on Instagram 2 days ago that really made me quite sad. And it was a reel, and they had like mocked up some images from some videos from Friends, the TV show Friends. And it was like doing a parody kind of thing of like, oh, how you feel when you get paid. And it was like how VAs feel when they get paid, when they finally get their invoice paid kind of thing. And I just thought that shouldn't even be a thing.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be worrying ever about getting paid, because there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it in our industry. You can and should charge up front. And I just want to share my experience and the reason why I did this. When I first ran my first business for 10 years, I didn't charge up front because it was a kind of service-based business where you had to deliver your product, your goods, what you'd done, and then they paid. So it would have always been difficult for people not to pay me because I was face-to-face with them. However, there were times where I did invoice people. And one of the biggest problems you have, especially when you're working with bigger companies, is that 30-day term turns into 60 days because they often try to pay on their terms. So then I'd send an invoice at the end of the month, and then their terms would be, we're going to pay you in 30 days, which was an absolute nightmare because it meant I was always waiting 60 days to ever have any money. When I started this business, LTVA Services, which is my VA agency, the very first thing I said to myself was, There is no way I'm putting myself in that position, because I can't guarantee that someone's going to pay me. And what's the likelihood I'm actually going to be able to send them to take them to court? It's probably never going to happen. It's going to be too expensive. So I'm just going to charge up front. And that was just straight away in my head that I was going to charge up front. And I suppose it might have crossed my mind. What if people won't sign up because they've got to pay up front? But I thought, you know what, it's just going to be my terms, and that's the way it is. I've been down this road before, and maybe it's because of my past experience that I felt comfortable enough to do that. But I know, Kirsty, you didn't do that when you started out as a VA. So I would be really interested to know why you didn't, if there was any thought process behind it, why you didn't go down that route.
To be honest, it's when you start out working for yourself, you don't I'm going to ask people to pay up front, because it's sort of, you just automatically think, particularly when you've been in a full-time role and you've had suppliers and customers that are on pay on invoice 30 days and extended credit and all that kind of thing, and it's your natural go-to. So my initial process was just to think, I'll just pay on, invoice at the end of the month for hoping to be paid within, all the 30 days. So you just naturally do think, pay on invoice. There was no kind of, swaying my mind or anything like. I would never even have thought to have charged up front.
And that's just because of the past experience you have from your previous employment.
Exactly. And it was purely that, because all suppliers and clients had credit and 30 days credit, and that was my natural thought process, was just to do it on invoice. But it was the worst mistake I ever made.
Yeah.
Really was.
Well, we're going to get into that, because what I think the problem is, people I think worry that if they charge up front, then people will not sign up with them. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a fear that people genuinely have?
I think the fear is that exactly that, is that if you charge up front, people are not going to pay up front. But if you have to pay out, you have to put that forward. And it is scary to say to somebody, because when I changed around and did it pay up front, I was terrified to say that to people, because I didn't want people to leave or people to get across or, kind of battle with me, because I was so new into the industry. And you kind of want to please that client as much as you possibly can, particularly when it's a big hourly client. So, don't be frightened to charge up front. You have to, because it's just the way, you just wouldn't do it any other way. No.
Well, I think you're protecting yourself in a lot of ways. So there's no reason why, as a VA, you can't charge up front or even take a deposit. But I would just say completely charge up front, because if the person you're working with doesn't have those funds, they are not someone you want to work with. If they don't have the funds now, how can you guarantee they're going to have the funds at the end of the month?
Exactly that. And also, when you're invoicing, and then somebody, when you've done, say, 50 hours a month or whatever it is, they come back and say, well, I'm not paying for that because I don't think you did that much. I'm going to try and knock you down, or I'm only going to pay you for 20 hours or whatever. And then you've given away, you've worked for free, because they're not willing to pay. And you have that awkward tussle with them in getting them to pay the full invoice.
I suppose that happens more with people that are charging by the amount, like the hour, rather than people that are charging on a package. So, for example, with our TVA, how we work is we've got ad hoc packages, we've got pay-as-you-go packages, and we've got our monthly support plans. And so there's no reason for people not to pay up front. They can choose how many hours they want us pay-as-you-go. With an ad hoc package, we always say, this is generally what we're going to be able to complete in that time. If we can't complete it in that time, you can then top up your hours, so they know that up front, and then they've got packages. So there's no reason they can't pay those up front. We don't do work that says, actually, 1 month it might be 20 hours, another month it might be 40 hours, and we'll just charge you based on how many hours you use that month. And I think that's part of the problem of where some virtual assistants are going wrong by allowing that to happen. And the reason is, if you do that, you never know your true capacity.
Yeah.
So if you're charging by, we'll just say how many hours you use this month. What do you actually reserve for that client, and how do you know how many hours you've got left for someone else? So this is why I would say packages are a good thing, and there's loads of talk out there about trading time for money, but packages lock people in, and more to the point, it locks you in with your capacity. So you know now what you've got free in your diary. The other thing is, if a client then wants to upgrade their hours, you can warn clients in advance. You can say, look, I've taken on some new clients recently. I know you're currently on like a 10-hour a month plan, but my capacity is going to be breached soon. If you want to have more hours with me in the future, I suggest you take them out now and upgrade your plan to 15, 20 hours. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that when you're ready to upgrade your time, I'll have availability. So that's the other reason why I would say using packages is really a really good way of getting paid up front, but also reserving your time in the right way. Because you didn't do that, did you? You did do it on how many hours that person had each month, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And also I think from a financial point of view as well, I think, when you know what you're consistently earning across the months, that worry of the financial part is taken away from you. And I did invoice on hours, which again was, a massive mistake, but you're just learning along the ways. And I'm not saying it's wrong to do it like that, but I wouldn't recommend it, because you're never certain on how many hours. And also if you've blocked out hours for that client who's, for example, giving you 20 hours in one month and 5 hours in another, you can't then bring in more clients because you're reserving that time for somebody else that might not be guaranteed.
Yeah, 100%. And you did that with your client. But I think the risk of that as well for you was you were relying on those funds for your mortgage payments. Yeah. So how could you ever be sure then that that client was gonna have enough hours that they would use over the month to actually bring in the income you needed?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. It fluctuated so much that you just can't. There was no consistency to it, so it was a constant worry of having to have the mortgage. I've got an amazing partner who was brilliant at the time, and to kind of help me out. But having that added worry, and starting your own business and getting clients in and all of that, it is so frightening. It was such a stressful time, because I couldn't ever be ahead. I was always behind, and then falling behind, catch up. It's not a stable way to work.
No, not at all. And it's that worry, because what comes with that, it's not just the fact that you're worrying about getting paid. It's what that does to your mental health and how that makes you feel from that point of view. And then on top of that, when you actually get paid, you feel grateful. And so it kind of reinforces this thought process that you should be paying on invoice and be grateful when you get paid. That's totally wrong, because the control is not with you anymore. Do you know what I mean?
But also, you're then back into that worry of, I'm now into another month and I'm still paying on it. They're still paying on invoice. So you're never really out of that worry, because, adding with the late payers or, the barters who want to, beat you down on your price or whatever, or your hours, their cycle of worry is just continuous.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And then also, if you're someone who has gone down this route because you're nervous, you don't want to ask someone to pay up front, but then you add on something like late payment terms, how are you then, as a nervous person, enforcing those late payment terms as well?
See, this is the thing, because I remember we had a conversation, and I remember lots of times I came to you, panicked and worried, and you said to me, add on a payment fee. And I was so worried. Again, you're adding worry to yourself, but the only person you're really harming is yourself. And it's okay to put in late payments and, send emails to say, look, you haven't paid, and I'm going to put each time, each month that you're late, there's going to be a 30, 40, 50 pound fee or whatever. But it's sending that message, because it's just, are they going to be upset? Are they going to be cross? Are they going to leave? What's going to happen? And the whole thing is just a stressful time.
Yeah, it is. And you've got to remember, some of these bigger companies that do pay on those terms, so you're emulating that, you think that's the norm, they do credit checks. So whereas VAs aren't doing credit checks against these clients, so you've got absolutely no protection when you allow someone to pay an invoice, because you haven't credit checked them to make sure they're good to pay. So that's the other thing you've got to remember. And you know, for me, I love that I never have to worry about chasing invoices. I don't chase invoices at all. The business is completely a constant, you know, when someone has a subscription, they pay in advance, that's month to month. And if they don't pay, they don't get any work done. It really is quite simple. And actually, I think customers benefit from that because they know where they stand. Would you be okay sharing with us your story, because actually it did end badly for you, didn't it?
It did. And I think, just to add to that, I think as well, because we're all virtual, you know, we're not necessarily around the corner to our clients. So being able to just, you know, or in the office with them, so being able to just knock on the door or pop around the house or arrange an in-person meeting is quite difficult. So that's another challenge for you. Yeah, I'd absolutely happy to share. So I worked with this client for a long time. And it was, I loved the job. He's, you know, he was great to work with initially, but then we came around to the issue with invoices being paid. And it was, as I say, it was a very stressful time because he was my main client. So he was my main income when I first started out as, you know, as a VA. And I submit the invoices and I'd hear nothing. I wouldn't get paid. I'd send messages, WhatsApp, phone calls, emails, text messages, and it would just go dead. And I'd have to chase and chase and chase. And because I was so frightened and worried, I would then carry on working for this person because I still had tasks to do, despite the fact there was radio silence and there was just no way of me getting hold of him. And you know, and I carried on working for him at the time. And that was another fatal mistake. But again, the worry is there. And I ended up getting myself in quite a lot of financial trouble because it was, you know, we just moved into this house. You know, the mortgage payments had, you know, were quite big. And that was, as I say, my main income. So that was my mortgage payment. So I was having to constantly borrow from my partner, from my dad, just to be able to cover my mortgage. And then once eventually that invoice was paid, if it was paid in full, I then owed that money to somebody. So I would never really see that money. So it was kind of, I'm borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And then when Paul pays, I've got to pay Peter back. So I never was really ahead. And as I say, I ended up getting myself in a lot of financial trouble with it. Because, and unfortunately, it did end badly because I submitted the last invoice to him, to the client, and it was disputed that I'd lied about the hours I'd worked, which is something I couldn't do because everything's timed, whether you've got toggle in-house, whatever. And it was unfortunate. It did end really badly. And I never got the money, unfortunately. I was never paid. So I was over nearly £1,000 out of pocket. And I had to, so that £1,000 that I borrowed to pay the mortgage, I never ended up paying back. And I ended up and the worry and the stress in that time of working, being paid on invoice and having to have awkward conversations just added to the worry. And I was really upset and really stressed about it. And actually it makes you think, what am I doing? You know, why have I done this? This is the worst thing I ever did because of that one single mistake that I made.
Yeah. And you made a really interesting point there, that at times when he wasn't paying you and he wasn't paying you on time, you would still work for him more because you wanted to keep him on side and make sure you got that last payment.
Yeah.
Which is awful.
It is awful, but you're right. And actually, when you finally paid, you're like, thanks for paying me. And then when you sit back and go, oh, hang on a minute, you've paid me like 20 days late. I'm now about to invoice you again. I'm going to have to wait another 20 days for that money. I've already borrowed, or if he said to my husband, can you help me out again this month? But you're never ahead with it. You know, you're never going to know. You may as well just go, well, I've just done all that hours for nothing because you're not going to pay me. I'm going to have to chase you. It's going to be awkward. I'm going to feel like crap because I've got to chase you all the time. And, you know, and it's so stressful. It was really, I can remember being on calls to you, just like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
What do I do here?
It was awful. It was awful. And to be treated in such a way as well, because it was your integrity that was questioned, and you're like the most honest person I've ever met in my life. So to have your integrity questioned by that customer at the same time saying things like, you didn't do those hours, that's just not a situation you want to be in. And at least if you're cocooned in a package, no one can dispute the time, no one can dispute the hours. If there's anybody watching that's struggling with this, they're either starting out and they're not sure how to charge, or they're in a position where they are unfortunately already charging on invoice and you want to get out of it. Whatever your situation is, just drop us a comment. We'd love to be able to answer your questions and help you out with this. So for me, it's all about charging up front. And I'm telling you now, clients will pay, because the kind of people that are coming to you, and by the way, you should only want to attract clients that can pay. You should only want to attract business owners that have got the funds. And as long as you're making your packages accessible enough, depending on who you are, you might be a VA that is niched in like high tip. You want high performers, you want people that are earning millions, and in which case you're not going to have a low entry package anyway. But if you are somebody who wants to do this, then make it easy because it has to be accessible for everybody. And there are small business owners out there who are desperate for the support, but they don't have a massive budget. That's why we have a 5-hour support plan as our lowest support plan. That starts from £150 per month. And so that's really, I think, quite affordable for a lot of small business owners. And in my opinion, if you can't afford £150 per month as a small business owner for support, then you shouldn't be seeking for that support anyway. You just can't, you should not be going down that route. And for me, it's almost like a credit check in itself, that if someone can pay me up front, then I know they're good to pay, continually. They've got the funds. So paying up front, please don't worry, clients will pay. But it's how your process works. And also, if you've got pay-as-you-go, there's no excuse. Our pay-as-you-go is £50 per hour. Someone can just have an hour. So we've always got an answer for somebody if they say they don't want to pay up front. But I'm going to tell you now, I've never had a client say, no, I'm not going to pay up front. Not once. I've had clients try to haggle, try to say it's too expensive, but I've never had a client say ever that they're not willing to pay up front. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have clients who do pay an invoice, because if you're working with corporates, they're generally not going to pay up front. It's going to be more difficult. But you can have terms where you charge every 2 weeks or something like that. So at least that way, bear with me, somebody's calling me. So that way you can break those payments up and you can say, look, our terms have to be this. And you can, the one thing people don't realize they can do is you get people to sign your terms and conditions, not theirs. So at the end of the day, if you're working with the corporates and they say our terms are 30 days, you're like, well, tough. Mine is this. You have to pay within 7 days of an invoice. And again, they either sign those terms and conditions and say okay or not. And corporates are generally, like bigger companies are generally quite good, but you do have to do some invoice chasing. And we only have one of those kind of customers. So we're quite lucky. They generally do pay on time. Not always, but this one customer out of how many we've got that we have to chase. And we can still, one thing we've got in our arsenal is we can say, if you don't pay, we stop work. So how it works for us is our clients, bear with me, I'm just checking the chat. Our clients pay up front. Let's say they have a support plan. That plan is added to their time portal. We've got our own time portal. The associate VA is assigned to it, and the clock starts running every time they do work. If the clock runs down and they run out of time before their monthly reset date, they've got two options. They can either upgrade their plan, three options: upgrade their plan to the next plan tier. They can add some additional hours, so pay-as-you-go hours to top it up, or they can wait until their reset date. So we always make sure it's in the client's control, so they don't have to feel like, for example, if you was doing this by saying, oh, well, you've done 20 hours this month, or 40 hours or 50 hours, and they went, what? Where did all those hours come from? I didn't expect to be doing that many hours. We're not going to have that problem. Do you know what I mean? Because you will have clients that don't realize how much time they're using with you, and then suddenly will get to a point where they only budgeted, for 20 hours and they've done 30 at the end of the month. So it avoids that problem as well. Yeah. So our process is quite stringent. It's all automated, the whole onboarding process, and we've got ourselves to an amazing point where we get clients signed literally within 24 hours. So it's 48 hours is our goal, 24 hours generally at the moment, the way we're doing it. It's an amazing process. So somebody books an inquiry call with us, with Kirsty generally. And then what happens is when a potential client books an inquiry call with our TVA, an automation is triggered and a form goes out to Kirsty automatically, telling her to fill that in on or after the client call. And the form is designed to collect certain bits of information that allows our automation to fire off the right emails afterwards. So what it does is it collects the information about the client's problem, what we think the solution is, and then we put in there what we think the monthly support plan should be, and then most importantly, how the client wants to proceed. So we have various options for how the client wants to proceed. If they say they're happy to go ahead and they want to be matched with a VA, we check that box. If they say they're not ready right now, we check that box. If they say call me back in 6 months, we check that box. And if they say it's too expensive, we check that box. Based on the response, the automation picks that up and automatically sends out the right emails. The one we really want them to pick is that they want to be matched with a VA. Now, we removed the step of a VA having a client call because it was taking too long. The process was then too long-winded. Instead, with our associates, they all film a welcome video when they join us. And what happens is if they choose the option, I want to be matched with a VA, Kirsty gets an internal notification to say, send this particular email. It's an email template out to the client. The reason that can't be automated is she has to put in who the VA is going to be, their video, and she has to put in the payment link for whichever support plan it's going to be. That happens within 2 hours of the call. So that client now gets an email saying, great news, we've matched you with this VA. Here's an introduction. And rather than having a call, they get a video. And here's the payment link to sign up. And then the system waits. Also in the background, they get sent a proposal on the back of that form. The system waits so many hours again to see if they've paid or not. If not, it sends them another email to remind them that we've sent them this email. And that repeats for 48 hours in total. But by the 48th hour, we reminding the client that actually we're not going to hold the availability of this VA forever. So if you want to sign up and you want to make sure this is the VA that you're going to get, you need to pay now. And every time that payment link is in there. And the clients generally do sign up. If we get a client that says to us that they don't want to, sorry, people keep calling me. If we get a client that says they're not ready right now. So I had a client call this week and they were very on the fence. We tick the box that says, I'm not ready right now. And they get an email saying, what a shame that you're not ready right now. And off they go. We're not going to chase them because if they're not ready, they're not ready and it's too time consuming. If they tell us to call back in 6 months, we actually have a really polite email that goes out and says, no, we won't call you back in 6 months. You know where we are, because our time is precious. And that's the thing about this situation with not charging up front, that your time is so precious that if you're spending it chasing invoices, then that could be time spent elsewhere. But most importantly is this point. If you say to a client, yeah, we're going to work together, amazing, you can pay on invoice, even if it's a package, whether you're doing a package or you're just timing hours, it doesn't matter either way. But that client then procrastinates and doesn't give you the work. You're waiting for logins. You're waiting for all of this stuff off the client. You're basically reserving your time for free. And we actually had one of our associates bring this problem to us. And we was like, but if you're waiting for that work to come in, you still have to keep those 10 hours a month or whatever it is for that client available. And at the end of the month, they haven't given you any work, so you can't bill them, but you kept that time free for them. And that's the other reason why charging up front is so important. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, if you're keeping time for a client that's paying on invoice and they paid for that time, and that time could be filled with another pays you up front or will pay on invoice if you choose to do that. And you've got an income. You're still waiting for that client, but it's situations. It's hard to be upfront and honest with people and give people your terms. You know, in that situation, the VA didn't go to the client and say, look, I've kept these 10 hours. You've not given me any work, but I was nothing to invoice you for. I'm not going to keep any hours for you now. Let me know when you're ready to come back to me and we can pick up then. And it is frightening to do that, but please don't be frightened to say things. Don't be frightened to say to clients, I'm charging up front. You've not hours until you're ready to come back to me. This is your business. You're doing this for yourself. And that's the one thing that I struggled with, was being, and you know, these are my terms. As you said, I don't care if your terms are 30 days, mine are 48 hours or 7 days or whatever, or up front. It's about, you've got to just be honest and just say what you want and say what's right for your business, because it is frightening. Lisa told me 100 times, don't be frightened to say things to clients, because that's it. That is, it's about having that trust, and that you can say things like that to them. And if you're going to work with a client, you've got to have that bond with them, that you can be open and upfront and honest. So don't be afraid to say.
Yeah, 100%. And also it makes you more professional. Clients really respect that.
Yeah.
If a client comes to you and they're generally business owners, they're generally, you know, going to be quite confident, and they see a weakness in you, especially someone who might be, you know, looking for a free ride or whatever, they're going to see that weakness in you. But if you show them, I know what I'm doing. I am a proper business owner. I am professional. These are my terms. I respect myself enough. These are my boundaries. They're going to have that same respect for you going forward in your relationship. Somebody's asked a question.
Yeah.
So you charge them up front, and that essentially holds their hours. Does that double up as their first month of payment? Yes, that's right. So basically, what happens is, let's say we've just had a client call. They've said, I want to take out a 20-hour-a-month package. We say, brilliant, here's the link to pay. That buys them their time for that first month. And then we start work instantly. And then next month, that time will reset on the same day. So this is the 21st of March. It would reset on the 21st of April, and we keep going. If they ran out of time before the 21st of April, then the client would have options. As I said, they would be able to either top up with some pay-as-you-go hours, they would either upgrade to the next time plan, or they can just wait until their time resets next month. So we really put that ball in the client's court, so to speak. And we do try to last clients' time out. And we're very open with clients as well about the reality of their time plan, because not a lot of VAs do this, but a 5-hour-a-month plan is 15 minutes per day. That's it, right? A 10-hour-a-month time plan is something like a half an hour a day. So it's not a lot of time. And when I had a client call this week, and when I said to her about the time, I said, look, she asked me, what do you think I need? I said, I'm going to be really honest with you. I think you need 10 hours. I could say to you 5 hours, but I'm going to tell you that's 15 minutes a day. Do you think that 15 minutes a day is long enough for what you need? And the answer was obviously no. And people don't realize that. That's not to say that you only ever do 50 minutes a day. Sometimes you have to double that up, but you do less days. But you have to be really open and get your clients to realize the reality of what they're buying, because a lot of clients get carried away. They're like, wow, this is amazing. I've got an assistant. And they start chucking all this work at you. And it's your job to say, hang on a minute. If you're going to give me all of this work and you've only got a 5-hour plan, for example, then we're not going to get a lot done. And that's your job, because otherwise, if you let them use up their time far too quickly, they're going to get really upset that nothing's happened, and they'll leave and they'll blame you. So just to give you an example of that, I had a client on 5 hours, and she's on 10 hours. She wanted a 1-hour call every single week. And I had to point out that will take half of your time just on phone calls across the whole month. She actually dropped down to 5 hours and still wanted that. And it was like, then we'll never actually do any work. We'll just have phone calls. So be really realistic about your time with your client and have that open communication with them. The best way to do that is on your initial inquiry call. This works great in two ways. On your inquiry call, you're gathering information, but you're telling them everything as well. So if you tell them everything up front on your inquiry call, your payment terms, how they can cancel, how they can upgrade, downgrade, if you roll over time, everything on that call, and then you reinforce that with a follow-up email afterwards, there's no messing around then. There's no reason for them to have multiple calls with you afterwards. And by the way, if clients want follow-up calls with us, we charge them £50 per hour for that. We don't have follow-up calls for free, because a lot of people are looking for someone to offload onto. They really do want the support, but they're not ready and they can't afford it. But they like having that call with you because they're kind of getting some kind of, I don't know, some support in some way. If you keep on having multiple calls with clients who are telling you they're going to sign up, but they never do, that's hours and hours of your time for free.
Yeah.
So it is difficult, as Kirsty said, because you have to have really open discussions with people. But you are a business owner and you have to act like a business owner, and you have to protect your business and you have to protect your mental health. So you have that initial inquiry call. If you really hate talking about terms on the call, fine. Let them know that all of the information will be coming in an email, and make sure that email is robust. It contains all the information they need and the payment link to sign up to their support plan. Does that answer your question, Serene, about charging up front? So yeah, it essentially holds their hours, but so this is the other thing I will just add to that. We're not evil. We're not the kind of people that are like not flexible, because our agency is extremely flexible. But what we do say is, if a client isn't happy, they can have a refund within the first 7 days. If in the first 14 days of payment, they haven't actually given us any work, we will give them the option to have their money back, because it might be that we're just never going to get any work from them. But if they go past those 14 days and a whole month has gone by and they haven't given us any work, and they say, but I didn't give you any work, I want a refund, the answer is no, because we've held that time for them. And we're an agency, so we work with associate VAs, and we also have to protect their time too. So we can't ask an associate VA to keep their time open indefinitely, remembering that actually when a client comes to us and makes a payment for a support plan, the associate doesn't get that money until they run the clock and do hours. So it isn't fair on them. So we don't ask them to do that. So hoping that answers your question. But does anyone just, I mean, for you, Kirsty, it was all about fear. What was that fear really all about? Why you didn't ask for payment up front? Once you realise, oh my God, I've made a mistake, we talked about how you could break that chain. And for me, the advice would be, we're about to come to a new tax year. It's always a brilliant time in the UK, particularly, to make changes when it comes to payment terms, is the beginning of April. And you could say, we're going to be changing our payment terms to payment up front. We can't expect you to pay double, because essentially if you changed your payment terms with a client in that way, you'd ask them to pay last month and next month at the same time. So instead you would stagger it, and you would add a week on, and you do that until they've caught up and they're now in front. Do you know what I mean? And I suggested that to you, but you didn't do that. So talk about why not, what that fear was.
It was fear, as I say. It was the a big income for that month and relied on that. But it's the fear because you don't want them to go, well, I'm not doing that, see you later. And then that, because it doesn't matter about the value of the work. It's just terrifying to have that conversation. Even now, talking about it, I get really sweaty hands because it is so fun saying that to somebody. But you have to just dig deep and say it. And it's I used to have no sleep. I used to worry myself to death all the time, but just do it, because at the end of the day, you don't want to work for free. Don't be frightened to do it, because I was frightened. I know what that's like. And if anybody wants any help or wants to talk it through or whatever, feel free to reach out to me. Absolutely no problem at all. I promise you I won't charge you. But don't be frightened. And one thing I will say, another massive mistake I made, I didn't have a client contract. And if you are frightened to say about your terms, your packages, your payments, and everything else, put it in contract, make it really clear, and get that client to sign that contract before you do any work at all, because that was the other I had nothing to fall back on. I had no confirmation, it was all agreed by phone calls, and I had nothing to say, well, you signed this is what you agreed to, this is what you should be doing. And that was another massive mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, it's how we learn. But just take this advice from me, from somebody who made 2 massive mistakes, and don't do it like I did.
And if you want to reach out to talk to Kirsty about this, she's quite right. She wouldn't charge you. It's kirsty@ltvaservices.com. That was a really good point, actually, about the agreement. So you're right. The other thing is that we do is, even when a client pays, their contract doesn't go out until they've paid. The contract then goes out, and if they don't sign it, we don't start work. Bear with me. It's just that my son is making lots of noise again in the room. Thank you. Theo? Yeah. Sorry about that. I'll have to chop that out for this bit when it goes onto the podcast. But this is the reality of, running your own business. Right, he wants the toilet. Go on, go to the toilet. Stay out there, I'll call you in. Right, so Serena said that's so helpful. No problem, you're more than welcome, lovely. Oh, lovely. Do you know why I'm saying lovely? I'm going to tell you now, I never say that, but I've been watching these bloody TikToks with these fake digital marketeers. It's driving me mad, and they all go on a live and they go, hi, lovely. Anyway, so I've been following to do some TikTok stuff about it. So I've done some spoof lives. But anyway, we're going off on something else. Right, so our contract goes out. They sign it, then we start work. And we do actually have a done-for-you client agreement. So if you need one and you haven't got one, if you go to the link in our bio, we've got a free resources section. You can skip the free resources. We actually do have the done-for-you client agreement link in there. But if you want access to loads of free resources and our community group, which is separate to this and it's completely free, then sign up for our free resources and you're going to be able to get like literally loads of done for you templates, links, freebies in there. We've just added a new one, which is how to convert your website videos, your website conversion. So people who visit your website, how you can get them to convert by making some tweaks to your website as a VA. So that's just been added in. And then we've got a community group as well that's completely separate to this, where you can access your membership and you can just chat in the community group and get any support you need in there. And it's 100% free. And we've got no plans to ever charge for that. So that's the link in the bio. And as I say, it's called free resources, I think. So that was a really good point, Kirsty, about that not having an agreement. But even when you do have an agreement, this is going to sound awful, but it's not always worth the paper it's written on, because it's really there as something to deter people. But how many VAs would actually enforce it? Because it's costly, isn't it? How many people would actually enforce those terms, if it came to not being paid?
Yeah, it is. But I think had I had that, I mean, in hindsight, had I had that, would I have been strong as per your contract? But I think if I had that, I could have said as per your contract. But because I didn't, I didn't have anything to, how many different ways can you put into a text message or an email? Or, pay me an invoice, do you mind? You're becoming that person. Please, can you pay me? You shouldn't be like that. No, nobody should ever say, you went to Tesco's and do a food shop and the person at the till would go, please, can you pay me? Because it's just not how it works. But if you have that contract, at least you've got something to say as per your contract.
Yeah. And also, one of the reasons that I think VAs worry is they've kind of got themselves trapped in the client's ecosystem, so to speak. So now they can't push for payment, or the client hasn't paid, but they keep doing work because they're so worried that they're going to lose this client. Like you made a good point. This client that you had was actually your only client because it was a big one. And you felt like if you changed your payment terms, then they might leave you. And so you was basically just doing what they wanted you to do because you were so worried about losing that client. But I think what people fail to realize is that client is also reliant on you. So as much as you're fearful of changing your payment terms, they are already tied in and invested in you. They don't want to swap, trust me, because to have to go to someone else, they've now got to go through the hard work of sharing all those logins, swapping to FA codes, getting that person trained up on their systems and processes. So you've got that. That's to your advantage to remember that. So if you want to change your payment terms, don't let the fear of the client walking away hold you back. Trust me, they might kick up a fuss, but they're not going to walk away from you. It's very unlikely, because they're invested in you and what you already know about their business. And if they were going to leave you, they would have done it by now.
But also, if you think about it in a roundabout way, and I think I mentioned this to you at the time, if they're not paying you, then what's the point of being with them anyway? Because you're not being paid. So you may as well be without them. And I remember you saying to me, why don't you just be without them, have no worry and no stress, because you're not getting paid anyway. So you may as well go, see you later.
And that frees up your energy then to go out there and get a client that is worth your time, who's going to pay you and who's going to align with you. The thing is, look, we've got ourselves to a point now, and me personally, where I know exactly who I'm not going to work with. I think people talk a lot about who they want to work with. Forget that. Think about who you don't want to work with and have that in your mind. And if you've got people coming to you and we had do you remember there was an inquiry call probably about a year ago, and she was very demanding about the work she was going to want. And we was like, nah, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to put one of our associates through that.
Yeah.
So we're like, we know what we are not willing to accept as well. And if you've got someone who right from the off is talking to you about your payment terms, telling you how it should be done, that's not the type of client you want to sign up for. It's a big red flag.
And don't be afraid to say that you don't want to work with somebody, because when I match VAs with clients, I always say to them, if you don't feel like it's right or you're not quite sure, don't be afraid to say to a client, I'm really sorry, we're not a good fit. We had a returning client quite a few times as well, didn't we? And they recently came back to us, and we'd had various different problems along the way that, with different VAs that we'd matched with, and I worked with them and Lisa worked with them and all, that kind of thing. And it actually got to the point they came back recently and said, work together again. And I said, no, because she was so demanding. They would, it was just a stressful time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was toxic. And I didn't want to work with her, which means I wouldn't match with anybody else, because it's not a very nice. And when you're starting out, you do feel compelled to work with anybody that's, that you get, you build a client list, and you do feel obligated to work because you want to build your client base up, but you'll get there. It's hard. We've said this last week. It's hard. It's a tough slog, but you'll get there in the end. Just choose who you want to work with. Don't just work with anybody for the sake of working with anybody.
100%. Brilliant advice. We're going to go in a moment. So before we do, if anyone else has got any questions they want to ask, please pop that into the chat. But next week we're going to be back with some guests. I won't be here. Kirsty's going to be here with a couple of guests, and they're going to be talking about navigating business legals, the essential tips to start your VA business right. And that's going to be with Kirsty Gibbons and Kate Bunn. And they're going to be talking to you all about that, about the legals behind starting your VA business. So it's going to be a really good one if you want to ask any questions, because I recently discovered that actually there are some legal rules around financial compliance, and a lot of VAs offer bookkeeping service, and you're not allowed to do that unless you're registered for anti-money laundering rules. I actually have a quiz, again, link in the bio, if you want to know if you're on the, the side of being illegal with that or not being compliant, sorry. So they will have loads of answers for you about that, and it'd be a really good one to tune into. We always post back onto the feed the lives, and if you go to the link in the bio, you can go to the VA Live Lounge podcast, where all of these bloopers are edited out, and then we've got so you don't have to listen to that. And you can always email us as well, so info@ltvaservices.com if you want ask any additional questions, have any additional advice. But my top tips for me that I would leave you with is, if you've not yet started pricing and you've not yet started taking on clients, please charge up front. Do not charge an invoice. You have absolutely no protection, no guarantee at all that person is going to pay you. There could be some person out there that just goes from VA to VA to VA getting free support every time. Always charge up front. Make sure you've got a robust client agreement. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my son laughing in the background. I'm going to kill him. So always charge up front. Make sure that you remember the reason you're charging up front, and it's to hold that package, it's to hold that time available to the client. It's not just about the work that gets done. or it's about the time. It's your time that they are paying to secure, because your time is precious. Have a good client agreement in place, and make sure that you give all of the information up front to avoid follow-up calls. And if you are having follow-up calls, then make sure the client's paying for them. What would your top tips be, Kirsty?
Yeah, I agree. And I just really just dig deep, and don't be frightened to say what your terms are, because you've got to look after yourself as well as your client. Because just don't be afraid to set your terms out from the very, very first initial call with that client, and then it's done then. And then, you know, as long as they adhere to them, then you're absolutely fine. But yeah, that's what I would suggest. Don't invoice on, don't pay on invoice.
Don't pay on invoice. Right, lots of people have just joined, but we start at 10 a.m. UK time. It's every Friday, 10 a.m. UK time. You can join us on Instagram. And you can also, I mean, we could probably start sharing the restream link because people could come direct to the studio. We're also on YouTube as well. But we always play these back. So if you've just joined and we're about to wrap up, then please just wait about half an hour and then the full episode will be on the grid. But thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and for asking any questions. Sorry about the initial tech issues to begin with. We'll get there. And we can't wait to see you next week. Well, Kirsty can't wait to see you next week, where she'll be with Kirsty and Kate talking about navigating business legals and the essential tips to start your VA business right. We will see